Last week we read about the spirit of time, the time spirit or the Zeitgeist, which Kali embodies to carry the march of civilization forward, not through a slow and laboring evolutionary process, but through a swift and sudden revolution. That is her method to wake up through the sharp sword of pain to the great ideal towards which humanity moves. The same truth we find in the Gita. But where is this caravan going? Where is this march of humanity going? And I thought we can read that today. Aurobindo has written about it at great length in several places. But as we know that he has approached this from so many sides, so many angles, so that nothing is left unsaid. So today we can read it in the spirit of the day, which is being celebrated, which is celebrated in parts of India, especially in Puri and Orissa, as the festival of the Jagarnath Rath. Today is the first day of the great journey. There is a very nice, beautiful little poem that Tagore has written on this small little piece on this event. As we know, the chariot comes out and the king sweeps the place. He makes the place ready and he is also pulling the chariot. And in the chariot, the image of Sri Krishna along with his brother Balram and Subhadra, they are seated and the chariot is driven through the streets. And as it is driven, crowds throng around and fall at the feet of the Lord. So Tagore writes, Rath, my Bengali is very poor, so please excuse me. Path jane ami dev, Rath jane ami dev, Dev bhave ami dev, hase antaryami. As people are going down the road, the path, it thinks I am the God to whom they are going down. After all, they are falling on the path. So it is this to which people are going down. Path, the path, thinks I am the Lord and I am the one getting the obeisance. The Rath, the chariot, thinks I am the one before whom they are going down. I am the Lord, I am the Master, and all of them are going in front of me. And then the image, the idol, it thinks it is me to whom they are going down. But while all this salutation and receiving is going on, what everyone forgets is the divine who takes a laugh at all of us, hase antaryami. For he alone is worthy of obeisance, he alone is worthy of all our love, respect, adoration, admiration, surrender, self-giving, and everything else. So on this theme of Chariot of Jagannath, Aurobindo reveals the deeper symbol. It's in his, from his Bengali writings, it was written earlier for the Prabartak, which was one of the Bengali journals brought out by Chandanagar Group. And it has been translated into English. The Chariot of Jagannath, what it is? What is this symbol which is preserved in the memory of the race? Maybe as a far off ideal. Aurobindo writes, the Chariot of Jagannath. An ideal society is a vehicle of the divine. So Chariot of Jagannath symbolizes the ideal society. And one look at it, we can understand the symbol immediately. The ideal society is not centered around the ego. That is just its anathema. In Savitri, Aurobindo describes the world created by falsehood. There ego sat on its peacock seat with falsehood as its mate and queen. This is the condition of the world. But that is not the ideal society that the divine wants to build. In the ideal society, it is the divine who is there at the center. The divine as the inner soul of collective humanity. Why divine alone? Because he alone is one in all beings. Ego by its nature is separate. It is different in different persons. We think differently, we feel differently, and our ego structures are so very different from each other. So if ego sits at the seat, there is bound to be conflict of interest, conflicts of ideologies, conflicts of thought, feelings, etc. But if the one divine who is at the center of each, not only human beings, but of each element of creation, and if men could come to realize it by some miracle, then this world would be truly an ideal place. An ideal society is a vehicle of the divine as the inner soul of collective humanity. It is not just this divine or that divine, but divine himself who is the soul of humanity. As the Gita says, Manavi Tanu Ashritam, I dwell within the heart of every creature. It is the chariot of Jagannath, the Lord of the world. And its four wheels are unity, freedom, knowledge and power. So these are the four wheels of this chariot. Unity, freedom, knowledge and power. And that carries the divine, his truth, his love, his vastness, his ananda. And then Aurobindo describes that humanity, because that is the archetypal image of a perfect society. So each age and each collective grouping in some way or the other strives to create it. And there have been, as we know, the threefold movement of nature, Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. So societies also accordingly are Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. We may observe three principal kinds of human society. In fact, society comes, the word in Sanskrit is samaj, and sam is together, and aj is going. It also is in the sense of born, going. So when we go together, so how do we go together? We can be united through common commercial interest. We can be united as in a crowd, just a loose-knit unity where each one is gone for his own trip. We can be united around a common ideal. We can be united simply mechanically, as in families of birth, or simply because one is born in a certain environment. But there is a deeper unity which we have to discover. The first type of society Aurobindo is speaking of, the first is the creation of expert craftsmen, beautiful, bright, clean and comfortable. Strong and well-trained horses pull it carefully, not too slowly, but without any haste on a well-laid track. It is a society which lives according to the Shastra, so there is a well-laid track. It doesn't deviate from that. And the carriage, the body itself is strong and supple. The horse is well trained, it is well built, it's clean, it's beautiful. The owner and passenger is the Sattvic ego. The chariot goes round and round the elevated plateau on which God's temple stands. But it keeps itself at a distance and cannot reach that high ground. To ascend there, one has to get off the chariot and go up alone and on foot. And this is very symbolic. If you look at the ancient Vedic society, this is what Aurobindo says, that the society of the ancient Aryans after the Vedic age may be described as such a chariot. So it was built to facilitate the individual's journey towards this great ascent. And if you really look at this kind of society, it respected the individuality, it respected the principle of graduality. Not everybody can straight away go into that high state. So there was first the base which was laid down, which was called as during the schooling period, the Brahmacharya ashram, where people were taught, children were taught calm, self-control, etc. So that they could be ready after a life of discipline for entering into the next phase, the Grahastha ashram, and where they could go through the processes of life, satisfying their worldly needs or desires, but under the domain, under the reign of dharma. So it was a society whose key word was dharma, and dharma was the goal of their life. So enjoyment was fine, as the Gita says, but under the governance of dharma. It says that a desire which is with and is not through adharma, that is fine. And through this, man was ready for the next stage. And the next stage was that finally, having seen life in all its shades, in all its vicissitudes, having gone through the battle and the struggle, its joys and its sorrows, one was ready for the next stage. But in the next stage, one walked alone. As we are reading here, he took to the forest, and then finally the sannyas ashram, where he aspired for a greater moksha. Moksha, not the way it came to be later understood, but a freedom from ignorance. So there were stages of the ascent. Even the human society was organized into what kind of people, according to the deeper temperament, the Swabhava and Swadharma. And Aurobindo describes all this in great detail. That was the Sattvic society, where, as he says, the rails were well laid, and the frame of the chariot was beautiful, and the horses were strong, the life force was strong, not weak and decrepit, the mind was strong. But all of this was surrendered and submitted to the greater and diviner law, the dharma, and it took the society towards a point where individuals could come down as and when they were ready and take the steep ascent. The second type of society is an automobile of the indulgent and efficient individual. Aurobindo very beautifully describes, when he describes this layer of mind, he describes it as a red, wild ass which is jumping from here to there. Now it takes a high jump, next it leaps into the abyss. It tears along at great speed in a cloud of dust, damaging the royal road, making a great noise and its uncontrolled haste. So this is a kind of false individuality where ego is important, and all that can give the ego comfort, pleasure and satisfy his desire. The society becomes an efficient machine to satisfy more and more the human desire, which have to be satisfied instantly, and the whole thing must move at a fast pace. So it is the fast paced society. The sound of its horn is deafening, and it runs over anyone who happens to be in its way. We don't have to contemplate much on this. Pondicherry itself is fast becoming that kind of society. The passenger's life is in danger. Accidents are not rare. The car breaks down, and after painful tinkerings, it resumes the same arrogant journey. Nowadays, that has been changed. The car breaks down and it's thrown aside, and a new car immediately is brought to the side. A car with a greater speed and a greater fuel efficiency. There is no fixed goal. If you ask anyone, stop them going with such haste, where are you going? We don't know. We are just in the race. We must come first. And where are you going? Where will this race end? That's none of our concern. We'll think of that later, if think at all. Its owner, the Rajasic ego, drives in the direction of whatever new scene comes within sight, shouting, this is the goal, that is the destination. What do you want? Oh, I want that new Apple iPod. That's the in thing. After 5 years that is gone, something new has come, and that's how it moves. To ride in this vehicle brings its own pleasure and also inevitable danger. But to reach by this means even anywhere near God is impossible. And modern society is such an automobile. It is moving at that, but of course Aurobindo says why this had to happen? Because there was so much tamas. If we just go back 100 years, There's so much tamas that Rajas had to come in as a kind of shaking it up before Sattva can come. But we must know that this is not the change, the new world that Aurobindo has envisioned. Very often we think this is the new world, but this is not the new world. The third kind of society is a dirty, old, half-broken cart, its speed that of a tortoise. If you look at our own Indian society, and of course, in a way, world over, 100 years back, we see this state, this tamasic state, drawn by skinny bulls, starved and half dead. It drags along on the narrow village path. In fact, even till date, in India, it's an unfortunate thing. The ideal, the father of the nation would be, the ideal would be like living like a Gandhi, clad scantily, walking with weak hands and frail limbs. But that's not the ideal of a Rajo-Sattvic society. There is no place of weakness, whether in the heart or the head, or even physically. But this kind of society makes even weakness an ideal. In one of the aphorisms, Aurobindo says, it's a sad thing that one makes weakness an ideal to be followed. It drags along on the narrow village path. Seated inside is a dirtily dressed, inert, blind old man with a big paunch as his only asset. Quite like the Brahmin Pandits of recent times, sporting a bald head and of course a belly which can be filled with a lot of sweets and savories. Listening to the harsh, monotonous screeching of the cart, he pulls happily at his mud-stained hubble-bubble, lost in broken and distorted memories of the past. This society always thinks of, there was that time when my grandfather was there. And it was such a wonderful time. And the grandfather always thought of his grandfather. And everybody else was wonderful except the present. And of course the future is always horrible. Any change to such a society is seen as something dangerous. It's not admitted. Aurobindo writes Aurobindo very interestingly takes a dig both as conservatism and blind reform and modernism. Both things. He is aiming towards something new and more beautiful, much more beautiful. And he writes, we can imagine 1909, 1910 when Aurobindo gives a new interpretation of the Vedas. He has that in his... What could have been the state of revolt among the old generation? He was, how old? 72, eternal. How old would the eternal be? 38, 39, 40 years around that. And he is challenging the established authority of Sayana, of Shankaracharya, of Max Muller, etc. And he says, these authorities are fine, but there is something else. And if change has to be abhorred, then all great men have done that sin. So here, but in this society, one is lost only thinking of the past. The name of this owner is the tamasic ego. The driver is book learning, who consults the almanac to decide upon the time and direction of the journey. Astrologer is the highest man, much like the octopus predicting the matches, albeit all right, whatever it be. So that is the highest. What is or was is good, whatever tries to be is bad. Traveling by this cart, one may well reach the void Brahman without delay, but not the divine. This society cannot lead to the divine, it can at best lead to a nihil, because it's a path of self-destruction progressively. It's a slow-moving vehicle, and if it enters into the main road, it is bound to be hit very badly. Aurobindo says one dreads to think what would happen if this bullock cart were to perchance enter onto the Grand Trunk Road. And in each of these societies we see unity, freedom, knowledge and power of a kind trying to manifest. In the tamasic society, the unity is purely mechanical. Those who are my associates, whom I know by birth, with whom I have shared a common environment, a common language, a common custom, they are my kin and close to me. I am unified with that. Aurobindo describes very beautifully in Savitri. The power is the power of inertia. It has a great power because it can endure ad infinitum. The knowledge is, as we have read, the consulting of the almanac. That is the knowledge without, when the soul has left it and only the words remain. And so also the freedom, if freedom that can be called, is only to somehow drag along that well-beaten track. In the Rajasic state also, there is unity. A unity of common interests, common desire satisfied. Aurobindo describes it elsewhere that people come together, but because they have a common desire to fulfill. And there is a freedom also, a freedom to enjoy life to its fullest. And there is a knowledge, the knowledge that can give man comfort, the knowledge of machinery, and a power that comes from technology. And so also in Sattvic, there is a unity around an ideal. There is a freedom, but a freedom that comes by a calm self-control. There is also a knowledge, but a knowledge of the deeper sense of the Shastra, and there is a power that comes through ascesis, through tapasya, through the self-denial of the ego. So each of these society tries to live this truth. However, though the Sattvic chariot can take man close to the plateau, close to the hill of God, still it cannot carry the entire collectivity towards that en masse. Foregoing all other endeavors, if a choice must be made only among these three, the reasonable course would be to make a chariot like that of the Sattvic ego. So if at all, if these three are the only possible destiny of the collectivity, and spirituality remains only an individual achievement, then the best is to have a Sattvic society of culture, of refinement, of knowledge, of a true kind, of a deeper kind, from which individuals can be ready to move further. But until Jagannath's chariot is built, the ideal community will not be created. It's very interesting that when Mrinalini Devi once in Shillong, she was sitting with Sri Aurobindo's sister, Sarojini, and it is said that Shillong is a very beautiful place. Those of us who have been, there are different, almost from the upper Shillong, one can look at the lower city and it's very beautiful. So she says, Sri Aurobindo's sister, what a beautiful city is this? And Mrinalini Devi remarks, you know, there is a much more beautiful city in the heart of your brother. So this is the chariot of Jagannath waiting to be manifest. That is the ideal, the best manifestation and image of the deepest and highest truth. Mankind tries to build it under the inspiration of the secret cosmic person, but due to ignorance in its nature, it only succeeds in creating a different likeness, either malformed, unfinished, and ugly, or possibly half beautiful or incomplete despite its beauty. A dwarf instead of Shiva. Sri Aurobindo in one of the early letters to Barin says, I have no intention to give my sanction to the old fiasco. And he says, if I do it prematurely, then what would happen? In place of Hanuman, people will seat a monkey and think that any monkey is Hanuman. So that is the whole problem. Or a Rakshasa, else a half deity of the intermediate regions. No one knows the true form or model of the chariot of Jagannath. No artist of life is able to paint it. The archetypal image resides in the heart of the cosmic person, but is concealed by many veils. So, it's there in the universal truth, this is there and it will manifest one day. But no human being on earth has ever dreamed of it. They have tried it, no doubt, because the shadow falls. To manifest it gradually through the efforts of many vibhutis of God, seers and heroes of action, and to embody it in the physical world is the purpose of the indwelling deity. The true name of this chariot of Jagannath is not society, but commune. That is how the principle of commune comes up. In one of his aphorisms, Aurobindo says, if ever communism establishes itself upon earth, it will be on the basis of the indwelling divine. So that is the whole sense of the commune, that at the center is the divine, and it's the divine in each one, and it's towards the divine that one has to grow. It is not a many-faced, loose-knit human collectivity or crowd, but a free, indestructible union, a divine commune, evolved in joy by the power of the harmonizing knowledge of self and God. Then he gives us this great assurance. A day will come when, inspired by the will of the world spirit, soul unity will be manifest as the result of the synthesis and unification of knowledge, devotion, and will. Knowledge, emotion, and work. These three, when they are harmonized and united, then mankind will be ready for manifesting this collective ideal. So long as we are either the head or the heart or simply working, that's not enough. All these three must come together. Then will the chariot of Jagannath come out on the thoroughfares of the world. Then shall its light spread in all directions. The age of truth will descend on the earth. The world of mortal man become the playground of the deity, the temple city of God, the abode of spiritual delight. This is the dream Aurobindo sees, and he points towards it when in his the labor that he was doing and is doing, as the mother said after Aurobindo's physical leaving the body in 69. She says, he is far more active than he was when in the body. He is working for this manifestation. That is the dream he speaks of in a God's labor, where he ends so beautifully. I shall leave my dreams here upon earth, which shall embody the living truth. That is the living truth which is in the heart of earth, the hidden sun of knowledge, which must emerge fully. And this is the dream that mother, very interestingly, when the mother establishes the ashram and then the Aurobindo, it is this dream, the same chariot of Jagannath which she is manifesting. Those of us who have read this write-up, A Dream, which is there in Collected Works of Aurobindo, volume 12, she says it is this dream of the Lord that we want to manifest in a small way in the ashram. And she says it is very difficult. It is not easy at all, because we human beings live by the ego. It is our life breath. We cannot imagine a day or a moment without breathing the ego. As Aurobindo says, each nerve and fiber of our being is shot through and through with the ego. It is only through a radical integral yoga that even an individual can be ready for this kind of a dream. And that is the reason why she establishes the ashram. And then she says about it something very interesting. My child, that is why the ashram was created. That was the idea. So then I thought, a place where material needs will be sufficiently provided for, so that if one truly wants to become free, one can do so. And the ashram was founded on this idea, so that our material needs are provided for, we can all strive and labor. As Aurobindo says, the word ashram comes from shram, the labor to conquer the ego, and through that emerge into the true freedom, the only freedom possible for man. A place where people would have enough to live on, so as to have time to think of the true thing. Mother smiles. Human nature is such that laziness has taken the place of aspiration. Everything is provided. Not for everyone, but anyway in quite a general way. And license or libertinism has taken the place of freedom, which would tend to prove that the human race has to pass through a period of rough handling before it is ready to pull itself away more sincerely from its slavery to activity. So this is we were reading the time spirit. Kali comes to change things. Human beings, we need those blows, because very easily when divine comes and gives everything to us, that now all that you need to do is just turn to me and surrender. God, that's very difficult. How nice, you have given me everything. Can you give me a little more? Sir, can I have 2 more table lamps? Can I have 2 more fans? A little AC would do good. After all, the weather is changing in Pondicherry. How nice if I could have 5 more pair of clothes, and so on and so forth. Yes, there is tremendous freedom, and freedom to throw in the abyss. So, Mother is telling us, that is probably why there are so many difficulties, because of complacency and licentiousness. Difficulties accumulate here, difficulties of character, health, and circumstances. It is because the consciousness awakens under the stress of difficulties. If everything is easy and peaceful, one falls asleep. So Mother comes to wake us up. First she gently calls us, then rings a little sweet alarm. If not, she wakes up the untimely slumberer and the sloth with her sharp shout of pain, if need be. And then she says, this is also how Aurobindo explained the necessity of war. In peacetime, one becomes slack. It is a pity. But that's not the note on which one needs to end, because Aurobindo says in another aphorism, all things, looking at our human nature, we would say that it's an impossibility that such a thing, collectively mankind emerging out of the ego, placing the divine at the center, is it really possible? There is a very beautiful line of Tulsidas that comes to my mind. He says, Ram so Swami kusevak moso. He says, Rama, thou art Lord, so gracious, such a master, and I am such a stupid, bad servant. It is only because you are seeing by thy eye of grace that there is hope for someone like me. So Aurobindo says, all things seem hard to man that are above his attained level, and they are hard to his unaided effort. But they become at once easy and simple when God in man takes up the contract. So the important movement is to give the contract to God. And then the Mother further adds, as yet, liberty, equality, fraternity are only words loudly proclaimed but never yet put into practice. And they cannot be put into practice so long as men remain what they are, ruled by their ego and all its desires, instead of being ruled only by the one supreme divine. And finally, liberty can only be manifested when all men know the liberty of the Supreme Lord. Equality can only be manifested when all men become conscious of the Supreme Lord. Fraternity can only be manifested when men feel that they are equally born of the Supreme Lord and one in his oneness. The individual cannot be perfect until he has surrendered all he now calls himself to the Divine Being. So also, until mankind gives all it has to God, never shall there be a perfected society. So this is the secret. The chariot of Jagannath is pulled year after year, and still it goes back to where it was. For a while, Krishna, Balram and Subhadra come out and look at this world, at this kingdom. For a while, men summit. The king and the ordinary commoner become equal because they are right there, face to face with the divine at the center. And they take the chariot out into the world. But not more than 9 days. 9 days or 8 days, I don't know. 10 days. Like Durga is immersed back after 5 days because men are not ready to hold that fire and flame in them. Aurobindo speaks of Mother Durga, this time we will hold you by the cord of devotion, we will not immerse you back because we need you. So also, let us hope that this time, this chariot of Jagannath, that is the ashram and the Aurobindo, will not have to come back, but will go on to create a more and more beautiful and perfect divine kingdom upon earth.